Hi everyone, welcome back to the Coding Adventure. I'm Tiffany. Today we're going to talk about drawing automation and specifically we're going to talk about placing views on drawing sheets. The last video we talked about just creating a blank drawing from an existing assembly. Um, Today we're going to just add views to that blank drawing and kind of go from there. We will cover two different ways of creating those view sets. So you have a side view, a top view, and a front view. Two different ways of creating those sets. The first way that we'll cover is using projected views off of a base view. The second way that we're going to cover is creating three base views and then aligning them. So we'll go through kind of the things that we have to do those three views in this video. This video will be located under the drawing automation playlist along with the previous video. So if you're interested in learning more about drawing automation, dive into that playlist and it'll kind of show you the way. So today I've already kind of blocked out the code that we're going to talk about and kind of wrote it out and we'll just kind of step through this code to kind of walk through the process of how to get started with placing views. So we'll go ahead and hit play. The first thing that we're going to do is we need to create the drawing document. So the drawing document in this case is going to be the active document. Typically in drawing automation, you're going to have created a drawing already. So you're ready to run the next set of drawing automation. A lot of times this routine would bring in a drawing document already. So it would be part of the input to this routine. In this case, we're not there yet. We haven't started the whole putting all the pieces together. So this will just be, we're just going to look at the active document in this case. So let's step over that, create that object. The next thing is we're going to set the assembly file path. We have the assembly open, but in this case, it doesn't necessarily have to, it doesn't necessarily have to be open because the next, this line will open the assembly. It will open it not visible if it isn't already open. In this case, it's already open, so it's not going to hurt anything. So we'll step over that. So we created that assembly file path, or the assembly document using the assembly file path. In the assembly file path, all it's doing is it's looking at the drawing document, looking at its full file name, replacing the DWG with the IAM. For this example, both the IAM for the assembly and the drawing that we're working with are in the same folder. So we just care about where they're located, and we want to create, those views on that document that that is typically in that location. So for this example, we're going to create create an active sheet object, and we're going to use the active sheet that we have open. There's ways for you to capture the first sheet and, activate that sheet. We don't care at that point. At this point, we're not at the level of automation that we care about, managing sheets and where they're located. This is more for you would do that typically as you get further along. You want to manage what sheet you're on and make sure that you're on the right sheet. In this case, we're not at that level of automation, so we are just going to assume that the sheet that we're on is the first sheet, and that is the sheet that we're working with. So for this specific case, we have a get view function that returns whether there's a side view on the sheet. That function is located in this module. It's down here. You bring in a document name, a view, or a view document, which is the document that we're working with, and the view name that you want to validate whether it exists or not. And all it does is it looks through the current view or the current drawing views on the sheet that we're located on. And it looks at the reference document under reference file. And we want to make sure that it is a view that that we, yeah. And the view name matches what the view name we brought in to be. So we want to make sure that both of those are matching what we want it to be. So the current view is, yeah, the current document we're defining up here, which is the active document. The current sheet is the active sheet on that document. So the current view is going through all is already defined up here as a drawing view, and we want to make sure that the current view's reference document, which is the whatever the document is referencing, which is in this case we want to make sure that it's the view document is the view document and the name matches what's bringing in. And if it is, it's going to return the found view, is going to return that and exit the for loop and then return the found view in this function. So if it's found, we don't want to create another view because that would create duplicate views. And Inventor lets you do that. It lets you create as many views as you want on top of views that already exist. There's no restriction on that. So you kind of have to add a little bit of error handling in that situation to make sure that uh, you're not over putting views on top of views, or you're not creating views that already exist. You don't want to do that on a first pass of the the drawing automation. And in this case, there's nothing on our sheet, so it will run without it. But as we're going through this process, we're running that routine over and over and over again. And we don't want it to, create views on top of views. So let's go back here. So in this case, it's going to return nothing because there isn't a view that has, side in the name and it references the same assembly document. So our side view is going to be a base view. And what it's going to do, the inputs to this method are, the assembly document, where do you want to place the view? What is the scale that you want to place it? What's the view orientation? What is the view style that you would like to do, that you would like to use? And there's a few more optional variables that you can use. And like I said, they are optional. You don't have to fill them out, but these first couple have to be filled out to accurately place the view in the right orientation that you would like it to be. So you see how that view got placed in the sheet center. If you want the sheet or that view to be placed in a different position, you would just use the transient geometry to place it, create a point 2D and place it wherever you would like it to be on the sheet. So we want to also rename the view. So in this case, it renames it over here in the panel to side view. And then we also want to show the label. So we want to go ahead and do that. So you have view and then whatever the scale is supposed to be. And for this first case, let's go ahead and uncomment this out, and we'll go ahead and comment this out. because we're going to get to that here in a few minutes. So let's go ahead and step through the projected views. So in the first one, like we went through, it's going to check to see if there's a top view on the sheet and step through it. Since it didn't find a top view, it's going to try to the first thing that it needs to do is create a position for this view to be located. And that's just to make sure that you're placing it in the position that you would like it to be. And it's good to go ahead and create a object for that because it's a pretty long line to create an object because you have to use the transient geometry to do that. And even if you cut this down to a specific, transient geometry object, it's still a pretty long line. So it's good to like not put that whole amount into your projected view and just create a, standalone object for that process. But what it's doing is it's going to create that point 2D and it's going to use the side view position, which is what we want. We want the position to kind of, since they're projected and since they are going to be aligned together because they're projected, they're going to be aligned. We want to go ahead and use the position because since they're going to be aligned, you can use, some of the position coordinates to get exactly what you would like it to be put in that position. So because they're vertically aligned, you can use the X view position, and then you just want to move it up the sheet location. So we use the position of the Y, and then we add the view height of the side view. And we, in this case, we're dividing it by 2 and adding 10. This 10 is an arbitrary number just to get it out of the way. If you have standards in that where you want to, take into account the the width of the view that you're placing. So in this case, you have this top view that's fixing to be created. If you would like to move it kind of out of the way, you may want to do that, move the view afterwards. So you place it in this arbitrary place that's kind of out of the way, but then you can go ahead and, use the position of that view that you just created and kind of just move it to wherever you need it to be. So there's always a secondary step that you can do to kind of get closer to your needs. So let's go ahead and step over that. We got the view position and we create the top view. So this top view is this view. In this case, we're going to rename the top view and then show the label. So the top view gets a label and it's kind of just out of the way. Like I said, if you need to do this, if you need to like move it around, I'll show you what we're doing on the base views only, and it's the exact same process that you would do it for projected views. So the next one we want to do is a front view. So kind of step through that, and we're going to set the view position. And in this case, it's going to be over here. So we want to use the X, but we also want to add the view width divided by 2. So this side view width, which is from here to here, actually it's a little bit more, there's a little bit of a margin. And you divide it by 2, and then in this case, I'm just adding 5 to just get it out of the way. So it's not on top of the side view at all. And then because it's horizontally located, you can use the position of the side view's Y position to, set it horizontally. In this case, since they're aligned, since they are projected, the Y position, even if you gave it a different value, the Y position would just be aligned. It's not going to let it, be vertically higher or lower because it's aligned. To do that, you would either have to do this, projected and then break the alignment and then move them around. or create 3 base views, which we'll show here, or I'll show here in a few minutes, where you can kind of move them wherever they need to be um, without doing an alignment. And then the next step is the front position, or the front view. So it gets created over here. And then we want to name the front view, which it did get renamed over here. And then we show the label. So you see how the label is. And the label, it moves with the view like that. So it kind of stays with the view. It doesn't have, you can define what the label position is, but if set it to a default position and you turn the label on, it's going to kind of be in the default position that it needs to be in. So in this case, we're going to, delete the views that we just created. And then the second process is to just create base views for everything instead of projected views. So let's go ahead and get out of that, and we'll kind of step through this process. So we're going to still do the side view the way that we did the original way because it was a base view. And then we are going to kind of step through the process of creating a secondary base view. So for this, we use the top view, but instead of using add projected view like we did up here, we're going to use add base view. And for this instance, we're going to treat it just like we did the top view up here, where we have the assembly, the position, the scale, and in this case, instead of using a right view orientation, we're going to use a top view orientation. And then with the same, style and default model name. So let's go ahead and turn that. So one of the things that happens when you're doing a base view is it just places it in the base orientation, based off of the top. Uh, in this case, you're using the top view, and it places it just like it, would be in the model. In this case, it's vertically up and down, and we don't want that. So after we do the name, we rename the name of the view, we have to do a rotation. And in this case, we need to, the input has to be in radians. So I'm going to do a 90-degree rotation, which is 1.5708. And I'll show you what the input is for this. Well, so you have this in radians. The documentation does not say radians, but it does. It is radians. Most of everything, I think everything for the most part, and unless I think there's a few things in maybe iLogic that you can use degrees, but for the most part, you have to convert your degrees to radians for inputs to most of the methods. And then the second one is clockwise. So if you wanted to go counterclockwise, you would just change that value to false, and it'll do a rotation in the counterclockwise direction. But in this case, I just want to rotate it 90 degrees in the clockwise rotation, so I'm just not setting that second value. And you see it did rotate 90 degrees in the clockwise rotation. And then we want to position, oh, I took out a letter when I did that mistake earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and change the position of the view to um, go ahead and like place it where it would typically be aligned. So you would have the side views X. So since it's vertically aligned, you want it to have the side views X, and then in the Y position, we're using the same offset as we did before. And then if you want to align them after the fact, you don't have to, but this is a secondary thing that you can do is you use this align method that has, you give it the view that you want it to align and the direction that you want to align, and it will go ahead and align it in a way where, because it's aligned now, you will see that line. You see how that vertical line connects the top view with the side view. That's what that does, is it vertically aligns it in a way that it aligns it, but it also connects it with an alignment line, so it can't be moved from left to right. If your whole point of adding a base view is to not have that, you would just skip this step altogether. You could just take that out. And then we add the view label, the view label. Then the next view is going to be the front view, which is going to be over here. Step through it. We create the front view with the same positional information. So like we go ahead and create the front view using the sheet center. Since we're going to move it here in the next couple of lines, it's not a big deal of like actually creating that. Then we're using the same scale. In this case, we're using a front view orientation instead of a top view orientation, and then hidden line style, or hidden line removed drawing view style. So step over that, and you'll kind of see that the view gets created. It's just right here for right now. You want to rename the view, which in this case, it changed it to the default name from the default name to front view. And then the position is going to be the same as what we did previously. You'll use the X and then use the side view dot width divided by 2 plus 5, just an arbitrary number to get it out of the way. And then side view dot position dot Y, since it's going to be horizontally aligned with that, with the side view. And then go ahead and do an alignment, which in this case it's going to do an alignment horizontally with the side view. And you see how that alignment is now, there's a line representing the alignment. And then we want to do a show label, which puts the label in the just standard position for the label. Okay. One thing I would like to touch on, let's go ahead and finish it. There's a secondary position or secondary reason on creating a position, creating this view position and using it to actually place the view. The reason for that is that the projected view, it does not define what type of view it is. It uses the position away from this view in whichever direction to define what that view is going to look like when it's located, or where it's located on the sheet. So because we are creating this point 2D and we're kind of creating a point up here, it's saying, okay, well, I'm using the side view and I'm up here and I'm going to be aligned with this view because it's a projected view. This view is going to look like this. It's going to be a top view. If you gave it a position down here instead of up here, it's going to say, oh, well, I am, instead of a top view, I'm going to be a bottom view. And I can kind of show you that. It'll just be let's delete this one and we'll walk through this example. So we'll just change this to minus. So let's step through this process. So the view position's going to be, did I? Variable without. What did I? Let's see. Oh, that's why. Okay. Even though, so that's probably, let's delete this. I know why it's causing that problem. Because the side view wasn't defined. We just kind of skipped over it, and it does need the side view to define what that is. So let's go ahead and kind of, I'll stop there, and then the reason why is because the side view is nothing, and it's trying to get the position from it. Um, there's some more area handling that could be put in place if the side view is nothing, uh, and the top view is not nothing, then you probably want to find the side view to be able to use the position of it. I just haven't added that functionality yet. So let's go ahead and add the side view again, and then we'll step through this process, but instead of doing positive, we'll do minus, and then step over that, and then it's going to be down here, and it's going to represent the bottom view, or the bottom of the view, so a bottom view instead of a top view, because you put that point. This point is down here, so it's going to make the assumption, because you said K base, K from base drawing view, it's going to assume, because you went down here, that this view is going to be a bottom view and not a top view. And that is the key, because it kind of can add some confusion to when you are doing different types of views, and you're using a base view. If you want a view to show up, you have to, put that position in a place that will cause that view to be that. And that means you have to kind of be the center and then go down. In this case, we used the center point of this and went down, and it used a bottom view. But if you were to kind of go over here, it would try to be a projected view, like a bottom projected view. So you kind of just have to be careful on what that position that you give the add projected view is, because this position is very important. It defines what type of view that you get. So, and I guess we can go ahead and just go through the rest of it. And it, did what we expected it to do. We didn't change the view, the front view, so it added the front view. So that is all that I wanted to cover today. This code update will be in the GitHub. I'll make sure and link the GitHub to our in the video, so it can be easily maneuvered to or went to, and then we will move on to the next goal of drawing automation. I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you think that it would help you and you would like to see more videos, um, I will try to add more as I can. Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a great day.